Okay, I've got the recording started now. So hi everybody. Just a little bit about who I am. My name is Jo. I am a wellness coach for doTERRA. I'm currently an elite. I work in natural cleaning is my passion, as well as pregnancy and birth. So that's part of what I'm here about today. What I want to share with you today is being able to use essential oils during pregnancy and birth. And around that time, I'm just going to do a bit of an intro into it. There can be a lot to it. I'm not going to go into absolutely all the little bits and pieces that can be done. I want to try and jam pack it into a nice little half an hour, maybe 40 minutes if possible. So I started using the essential oils. I actually got them just before I got pregnant with my third child. And at that time, I really just wasn't sure about using the oils when I was pregnant, and I wasn't really using them that much, and I kind of just shelved them at that point in time. But I did have a friend who sort of encouraged me a little bit, and I pulled out a couple that I used while I was in labour, and I really, really loved that. So the next time I got pregnant, I was using the oils a lot more in my daily life, and I didn't really want to stop. So I had a look at, okay, what are the safety things around using oils while pregnant? We know that oils, can have an impact, and I don't want to say they affect the body, but they are made up of different chemical compounds, and those different chemical compounds do have different outcomes when we apply them. So we want to make sure that those outcomes aren't actually things that are contraindicated while we're pregnant. So that's really why I want to share a lot about the safety and that sort of stuff. I also want to go into a few of the little handy things that I've used as well, and go into that as well over today. So let's just jump straight into the safety and that whole side of it. So basically, we want to, a lot of stuff is not going to come out saying that there's research that's been done on whether it's safe to be used, okay? A lot of things you can't test on pregnant women, that's not ethical, obviously. So unless we're sort of hearing stories of people that have used it and things like that, we're not really going to get those sort of studies and that sort of information happening when it comes to actual pregnant people. So what we want to do is we want to use care and caution. We want to take the advice of people who've given us recommendations on things like this, and we want to be careful around certain herbs that we would normally avoid anyway when we're out in the world. So when it comes to using essential oils, I will only look at using pure oils such as doTERRA, purely because anything that we're going to be, putting on us, in us, around us, we need to look at what's in it to make sure that there aren't any hidden toxins, fillers, things like that that are going to actually be having a negative impact on our body. We want to make sure that it's really only interacting with our body in the most optimal way possible. So that's why I'll always go for doTERRA. Now, what I love about essential oils is that there's such a massive range. So you never have to reach for something you feel uncomfortable with. If you've got something that comes up while you're pregnant and you think, oh, I wish I could use the oil for that, you don't have to reach for something that, has a bit of a caution on it if you don't want to. You can try something else that's, absolutely safe and fine, and just go with that one instead and see how you go. And maybe leave those other ones for something that's a bit more serious, or, for if you feel intuitively or instinctively later down the track you want to reach for something like that, that's fine. So that's what I absolutely love about it. When it comes to that, is that, you're not forced into everything being risky at all. There are some things that we do want to take care and caution with, which is what I want to go in with you. But generally, there are a lot of stuff that's going to be safe and perfectly fine to use as you normally would, or you just dilute and add a bit more of a carrier, or use a bit less oil than what you normally would. So when it comes to looking at situations where I might want to use some oil, I would basically have a look at what would I be using otherwise. Would I be picking something up otherwise that might have ingredients in it that could be harmful? And that's when I would look at my oils and say, okay, well, what would be the benefits of using these oils and what would any risk be? So in general, a lot of these oils are going to be quite safe to use as normal, but we do want to have a look at which is which and why those things might be and why some of these oils might carry some warnings. So some of these oils you do want to just avoid, okay? So there are a lot of herbal oils, especially things like thyme, rosemary, basil, cypress. Sorry, cypress is a tree, that's on the list as well. But there are some of these oils because they will actually interact with our blood system. And when we're pregnant, we have an increase of blood volume happening, and that's to help push all this extra blood flow into the placenta, this extra organ we've got growing this baby. So while we've got all this extra blood stuff going on, you know, we obviously want to take care that our blood system isn't overloaded. So those herbal oils that I've just mentioned actually do interact with our bodies to help boost that sort of production and can interact with that negatively. So in a situation where our blood volume is already working at really great capacity, we really don't need to add anything on top of that that's going to, you know, perhaps make that overfunction more than it needs to. So that's why we want to steer clear of some of those. So generally you want to either avoid them completely if you can, but using them at a really, really high dilution is absolutely fine. And you might find, you know, like using like one drop in a big long blend is not going to be, you know, you're not looking at it's dangerous to touch it or go near it or smell it, but you may as well err on the side of caution. That, look, this is coming from my advice, can I just say, guys, this is from my advice. This is what I did. I decided to err on the side of caution, just not bother going near them so much, because why, you know, there's other options. So when it comes to the herbal range, oregano is actually an oil that is fine to use. And it's something that when we're pregnant, we just want to dilute it a bit more heavily. So I actually use oregano as a substitute in a lot of my cleaning recipes where I really wanted that herbal benefit. I would use oregano instead and just dilute that more than I might usually do. So in a recipe, I might normally do 10 drops. I might use 5 instead and just go from there. So oregano is a really great substitute when it comes to looking at that herbal family, and I really love that. So that's mostly to do with most of the herbs, and that's the reason why you'll find a lot of those herbs are being told that they're not safe in pregnancy, okay? That's why. It's to do with your blood system, your blood volume, and that sort of thing. So if you are finding you're having those sorts of issues, then, you know, you might want to have a look at that, okay? So there's the herbal oils there. There's also a few oils that are bigger things that will actually stimulate the uterus. Okay, so we've got a few oils where you might want to use at that time of the month to help sort of stimulate and get things moving, etc. Okay, really, really great for toning the uterus, etc. But when you're pregnant, you don't necessarily want that to happen straight away or right off the bat, okay? So you generally don't want to be stimulating your uterus more than general, okay? So this is where your clary sage is really the biggest one to be mentioning here. There's a few other little ones that we don't really have the full oils of, but in doTERRA that is, but you can see them in blends and things like that, like camphor. We have a little bit of camphor in our deep blue blend, or ice blue. But it becomes very, very diluted because it's mixed in with all of these other oils. So by the time it's diluted with the other oils, and then by the time it's diluted again when you put it on yourself, then that becomes diluted enough to become pregnancy, you know, considered to be fine for use in pregnancy. Okay, so that's an example of that, and I will come back to deep blue in just a little while. Excuse me. But back to your clary sage. So you really want to steer clear of your clary sage, okay? But when it comes to pregnancy, that is something that I would recommend having on hand, okay? Because clary sage is awesome when you do get closer to that time before birth when you might be looking at wanting to stimulate your uterus slightly, you know, use it as a bit of a tonic, you know, times when you might reach for that red raspberry leaf tea. And, you know, stories you might have heard of people toning the uterus with that. Clary sage is really fabulous and really effective for that. And what I love about clary sage is that it doesn't, like any of our essential oils, it doesn't make your body do anything that it's not going to do anyway. So it's not an inducing labour, inducing labour oil at all. It's something that if your body is ready to take that next step and you happen to rub some on and it stimulates that and gets things moving, that's great. There are lots of stories out there where that's happened. For me, I had a lot of pre-labour leading up to my fourth baby, and I used it a fair amount when I thought, okay, is this happening? Is this happening? And I found it really, really effective. Every time I rubbed it onto my belly, I diluted it with a bit of fractionated coconut oil and just rubbed it on my belly after I got past the 36-week mark. I really found that instead of those sort of light racks and hicks, they were like those really good, strong, working, muscle uterus working. So I love that feeling, and that was really great for me to feel like I was helping the tone and get things ready, and that if things were going to kick off, they would have kicked off at that time. I didn't find that I needed to use it while I was in labour. Generally you won't, because generally you want your body to work within its own time. Once you're in labour, you want that to happen. But it is also something I wanted to have on hand so that if I felt like things like stalling, whether, I was getting distracted or something was going on, that was something that's just really great to be able to just have on hand and try, because, that's easy, it's accessible, I've got it on hand. I don't have to ask for anyone else. I can just go, okay, I think I need this, grab it, put it on, and away we go. So that's a couple of ways that I used clary sage, and that's why I love it. But you do want to avoid it in the earlier stages of pregnancy, obviously, and especially if you do have a bit of an irritable uterus, you want to, try and steer clear of that. So clary sage is also in the Clary Calm blend that we have. So the Clary Calm, it does become so diluted again that you could use that if you wanted to, but it's another instance where I feel like you can avoid it if you want to, and there's really no reason to have to reach for something like that when there's other options around. So there's those reasons why we need to avoid some essential oils while we're pregnant. And the final one that you'll find there's some warnings for are actually because the oils are really strong in themselves. So cinnamon is a great example of this. Cinnamon is one that you can use, but you want to dilute super, super, super strong. I tended to avoid it where I could, because there are a lot of others that you can use. But cinnamon, not only is it a very hot oil, so it's quite reactive, but cinnamon is also an enhancer. So what it does is it actually will stimulate the activity of the other oils that it's blended with. So even though you might not think that you're using something very strong, if no matter what the oil is, if you pop some cinnamon with it, it could actually boost that oil up to a strength that might not be safe, or that might be contraindicated, or it might cause some discomfort, etc. So that's why stuff like cinnamon you want to avoid and dilute really, really well, and peppermint also you want to dilute really, really well. And they are basically the main ones, things that will stimulate your uterus, things that will exacerbate things that are already going on in your pregnancy that you don't want to necessarily, increase further, and things that are going to accidentally, enhance your blends to a level that you really weren't going to be comfortable with if you had known that in the first place. Okay, so they're just some basics of some things to avoid. On a personal level, I really feel it's more beneficial to go and do your own research, even on each individual oil if you need to. I love using the Modern Essentials book. It's got a really handy guide at the back of all of the different oils, and it actually will say whether they should be diluted more in pregnancy, avoided altogether, etc. So that's a really great one to use as just a basic guide, and you can always go from there and look into anything further so that you know that you're really, really comfortable with what you're using. So in terms of what you can use, I'm just going to start with having a quick look at our top 10, because these are oils that are common for a lot of people to have, and a lot of people start with these. So I just wanted to go through, because the great thing about our top 10 is that all of them can be used while we're pregnant, okay? And I just want to go through and just pull out a few just to give some examples here. So we already talked about our oregano earlier being a great substitute for our other herbal oils. So this is one that while we're pregnant, we want to dilute more than what we usually would. So I would normally dilute maybe, you know, if you used 4 drops normally, I'd use maybe 1 or 2, okay? So I'd, you know, go that much further down. And that's totally fine, you know, less is always more when it comes to the oils anyway. So if you find, you know, a tiny, tiny bit have a great benefit, and you can always use it a bit more often. That way you can, you know, I like doing that too, you feel more comfortable with it more often. So oregano is one of those. Digestin is another one that we want to point out. Fennel and anise are some of the things that can come up as being a bit, you know, don't go too close while you're pregnant. So this is another one where by the time it's being diluted within the blend, it's actually getting closer towards, you know, not having an effect. You know, you wouldn't avoid a meal that had fennel in it just for the sake of, oh no, that's got fennel in it, right? Okay, it's just because these are much more potent that we need to look at these things. So when it comes to using Digestin, that might be the sort of thing that while I'm pregnant, I might not feel as comfortable to use it the same way as I would when I'm not. I might not feel as comfortable using it internally, for example. I might use it topically, and I might dilute it much, much more than I usually would, or I might pop it in the diffuser. But another thing that we can do is, rather than reaching for the Digestin, if we don't feel comfortable, is we can reach for something like a lemon and a peppermint, which will help with a lot of the same similar benefits. And I also love to add in a ginger, and you know, ginger is something that is really, really fabulous for all of those, you know, icky early trimester things that are going on. I love, you know, being able to make thickies and things. I used to find it really hard to have straight ginger tea, let alone trying to buy straight ginger to have in the house. So having the oil is just absolutely amazing to be able to just add into things or have a smell, etc. So your lemon and your peppermint, totally fine. And peppermint, as we said, you just want to dilute a little bit extra than what you normally would. And that's just for those enhancing extra properties. So your Digestin and your oregano take an extra caution, as well as your ice blue, okay? So, and this one, as I mentioned, is because it's got that camphorous nature to it, right? Again, it's not, by the time it's diluted, blah, blah. I don't need to go into that. So what I would do with this one, I actually had it sort of in my head that I would avoid it while I was pregnant. But I heard a lot of feedback from people saying that that actually felt absolutely comfortable using it, and using the rub version as well that we have. And I have to say that by the time I got to the very end of my pregnancy and had those horrible cramps that would come on in the middle of the night, I was already having some magnesium baths and things like that that were really, really helpful. But when it came on in the middle of the night, this was what I grabbed, and this is what saved me. I was able, you know, I was jumping out of bed in pain with a toddler right next to me, trying not to wake him, trying not to wake the partner, and in so much pain, hobbling down the hallway, and able to just grab this and pop it on, and that just relieved that cramp within seconds. I was able to just go straight back to bed and go to sleep, and that was fabulous, because that's something that kept me up a lot at night in later pregnancy with my earlier boys. So that's the way that I did go and reach for that, and found it ridiculously effective. And that was somewhere where I thought, yes, it's, you know, definitely worth grabbing in that instance. So when it comes to our top 10, they're really the biggest ones, and our easier, we just want to dilute a little bit more. But that's always, we want to dilute that to apply it on you anyway. So that's just a reminder for that one. But the rest of our top 10 are all, you would use them all totally the same as you would when you were not pregnant. And that's what I love about them. It doesn't matter what stage you're at, whether you're looking at being pregnant or not. Those are all something that you can reach for, and you've got a lot of tools there to be able to tackle a lot of your regular pregnancy stuff. Okay. So one of the things I want to point out just before I move on is that when we're talking about, you know, using our oils when we're pregnant, I'm not talking in a medical capacity at all. All right, the way that I'm talking is that, you know, we're talking about regular pregnancy life things that just come up. Okay, they're not, you know, they're not illnesses, they're not problems. You know, that's why I feel like I can talk quite openly about the way that I use these oils for them. Okay, because it's just a side effect of being pregnant that your blood pressure gets increased, you know, and your blood volume and everything, and you want to keep an eye on blood pressure, and so you want to know what oils are going to interact with that, you know. So when it comes to actually using it for medical stuff, you know, that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about at the moment. All right, we're talking about your day-to-day. I'm pregnant. I'm gonna, you know, I might experience some nausea. Let's talk about our lemon and peppermint and ginger. All right. So that's our top 10. That's what I love about them. Now, some other oils that I would recommend, because your top 10 is basically going to have you covered for pretty much everything. I've really only got a few others that I would recommend adding to that list if you're pregnant, to be able to really make sure you've got so much stuff on hand to be able to tackle your pregnancy, your labour, your birth. So we've already talked a little bit about our ginger and why you might like to get that on board, okay? I suffered from a lot of morning sickness and a lot of nausea when it came to all of my pregnancies pretty much. But I actually found that my least sick pregnancy was my fourth pregnancy, which was my doTERRA pregnancy. And I actually felt that because I just had a big water bottle and I just popped a drop of lemon and a drop of peppermint in that, and I sipped that usually throughout the morning, throughout the day. I actually feel that that was one of the biggest factors in why I didn't feel sick. Whereas my third pregnancy, I was throwing up until I gave birth. I was one of those. It was horrible. So I was so relieved that, you know, with baby 4, I really felt that that made such a massive impact on me. It was great. So the ginger to that early stage, absolutely fabulous and vital. Now, clary sage is another one we want to add to that list. I've already talked a lot about the reasons why we want to have clary sage on hand. So I won't go too much into that and why we want to have that one around. A couple of others that I want to bring up, since we've been talking about blood volume and things like that, is Lang Lang. Okay, Lang Lang is a great one to have in your arsenal because the impact that it has is to actually increase the circulation. Trying to say it without saying it. If you're experiencing those problems with your blood volume and pressure and things like that, it's not medical issues, it's just you're feeling a little bit flushed or lightheaded, etc. This is a really, really great thing to that because it's going to calm down the heart and the circulatory system, but it's going to keep everything flowing smoothly through, okay? So I think that's the best way that I can put that, okay? So this is really, really fabulous for that, something fabulous to have on hand. And it's something that I actually became quite drawn to when I was early in pregnancy. I hadn't really given Lang Lang much thought because I'd only really ever heard of it as being like an aphrodisiac. And I thought, what do I do that for? I'm already knocked up, right? So I got really drawn to this when I was early in pregnancy. And what I found out was that it's actually the oil of the inner child on an emotional level. Okay, so that I felt was quite fitting for the stage that I was at that point in time. Okay, so the emotional level of this is also something that's just really fabulous to have on hand throughout your pregnancy. The next one that's just a fabulous on hand is geranium. Okay, geranium emotionally, the oil of love and trust, something that is just so tantamount to have a great connection and great pregnancy, great birth. Not to do with, you know, any things that you might be going through. They're obviously quite separate, you know, I'm not going to say that obviously, but you know, when it comes to, you know, really enjoying the connection that's going on and that sort of stuff, you really can't get past the geranium. I really, really love it. And I really, quite apart from that sort of emotional thing and that sort of the real feminine side to geranium that it brings out, you know, I also use this to help with supporting me in that general vicinity just before and just after birth. So let's have a little chat about hemorrhoids. okay? They're no fun. They, especially when they happen just before birth, okay? This was really, really difficult for me. And it was so painful that I actually ended up popping some of this on, as well as helichrysum with, I ended up popping them on undiluted, okay? Now, I don't recommend doing that. I don't recommend popping them on undiluted. It did give me a little bit of a burn, but at that point, I was in so much pain with these, you know, with these hemorrhoids that I couldn't even sit down, okay? So anything just felt like such a relief at that point in time. So if you've got your fractionated coconut oil, give it a nice dilute, make yourself up with something nice to just, you know, help soothe that. And that's what I used, and I really felt that did soothe that area so much that it actually, rather than getting worse, it actually did get better before the birth happened, which was fabulous because no one wants to actually be giving birth with that already in so much pain, right? So geranium, great one to have in your store for that. Great one to have for, you know, with your coconut oil, just for a massage for that general area. You know, just to help prepare the skin. Really, really great for skin in all those great sensitive areas. Love it. Okay. Now, basil. You mentioned earlier something you want to steer clear of when you're pregnant. Yes, absolutely. But this is something that I got specifically just for transition. Okay, and I would recommend anyone getting it specifically just for transition. Okay, because transition is one of those times, okay? And this, honestly, is just something that we just opened it and just a quick sniff while I was in that, you know, those moments of how much longer is it going to be? Can I do this anymore? When is it going to be over? Someone just make it stop right now. Okay, this was so fabulous, and this was in those moments when we were waiting for people to arrive, setting up cameras, and things just got a little bit hectic. This really, really helped me take the focus away from everything that was going on, and I loved it. Okay, so while so that's the basil. So I would have that around specifically just for being able to pull it out at transition. Okay. Now the last oil and my favorite is helichrysum. Okay. Now I could talk for probably about an hour just on this oil, so I don't want to go too overboard with it. Okay, but if there is one oil out of any of the oils that you could have during your pregnancy, labor, birth, this is the oil you want to try and get your hands on, all right? It is one of our more precious oils. It is one of our more expensive oils, and it does only come in a small bottle, but it is amazing, okay? Emotionally, the oil of pain, all right? That should pretty much tell you all you need to know, right? It is absolutely brilliant. This is something that can be used completely undiluted. You can shove it straight on wherever, whatever, whenever. I love it. Even though it is small, even though it is precious, I didn't use the whole bottle and I fell in love with it. Okay, so you know, you're still not going to use all of it. The quality is so high, you're still only using one drop at a time, and you're not going to go through the whole bottle before the pregnancy is out. Okay, generally. So I absolutely love this for, you know, any of those little aches and pains that came up. I already mentioned using it coupled with hemorrhoids, absolutely crazy. And so, yeah, this was just amazing. Also used it in my mouth when I had teeth issues because, you know, your teeth can degenerate a bit when you're pregnant and there's a bit of the calcium bone, whatever, you know, whatever it is that's affecting that, that's common in pregnancy. And yes, I used some of this because, wow. So I really just can't bang on about it enough. It smells really, really sweet. It's really, really beautiful. And yeah, this was the one oil that I wanted to be put on me quite often when I was in labour, you know, for that reason. So this is the one that I reached for. So since we've had a little bit of a chat about how to, you know, how you would go about handling some stuff while you're pregnant, etc., and we already know that we can sort of do it a lot in the same way we would throughout regular life. You know, if you've got an issue that comes up, you go to whatever resources you normally use and go, okay, I'm gonna choose that. You know, use your intuition, use your resources, etc., and go from there. So let's just have a little bit of a chat now about the labour and birth itself. Just to, just to get into that a little bit, okay? Because I want to talk a little bit more about that. Because that is something that, can be a little bit tricky, okay? And I wanted to give just a few pointers, all right? So when it comes to the actual labour itself, I really love the oils, but I have a few general rules, I guess, or guides that I would advise. I love using the diffuser, but what I recommend would be to use the diffuser in a space that's not necessarily the room that you're in, one that you can sort of come to and from, walk back into if you want to. So at any point you're not liking what's going on in the diffuser, you can just turn it off and that's fine, or leave the room. I really love the diffuser in the lead up to labour, those days when you're going, is it today? No. Is it today? No. Is it now? No. And that happened to me quite a lot. I had a couple of those labours, and this last one was no different. So I ended up using my diffuser quite a lot to support me in those times, just looking emotionally at stuff that's grounding, calming, balancing, all of that sort of stuff. So that, it's pretty much more about that, about getting the mindset, making sure that you're in a good mindset to be able to handle, this life-changing event that's about to happen. So yeah, get your diffuser happening, great. But yeah, I wouldn't generally recommend having a diffuser happening in the actual labour room while you're in your full-on active labour. I generally recommend not to use essential oils that way, not to really have the diffuser there. Unless you've got something going and it's really fabulous. Now, the reason that I'm talking about wanting to be so careful when you're in labour is because it is just such a sensitive time. You want to be really in tune with what's going on for yourself. Generally, you can't help but be in tune with what's going on with yourself. You just got to, you're in that mindset and you can't really focus on anything else. So when it comes to that, we want to make sure that we're really honouring that, and that we're able to just pick things in the moment that are going to be able to, deal with what's going on. So my favourite way is to just have a little kit of oils that you think you might use, some of your favourites, and that sort of stuff. Have them nearby. I love to have just a stack of face washes, tissues, cloths, and rags, something like that nearby, so that you or a support person can just go and grab a rag, pop just one drop on there, and bring it over to you to just have a smell, okay? And I love doing that. You might want something, something calming, something encouraging. That's a really great way that you can just use it like that, to be able to just pop it under. And if you don't like it, it can just be taken away straight away, okay? You're not popping it on your skin where it's sort of a bit more permanent. It's not staying in the room where it's a bit more permanent. It's just under the nose. That was great. Okay, bring me back more of that. No, that wasn't, okay? So that's one way that I love using it. I also had a big crock pot full of warm water that I loved having sitting there, so that I could use the oil with water as well, and the warm face washes. So I had a different face washer brought to me every time, with the oil popped on the face washer, and then that was just popped on my back, right down in here. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been through it before, that's the one. So there, and that's where I had my helichrysum, and because I really knew that I wanted helichrysum to be put on there, okay? So that's what I love doing, is being able to just pop that straight on there. It's on there really quick, nice, and then the face wash goes cold pretty quickly anyway, so you can pick a different oil, no oil, the same oil, whatever, keep going, change it up as long as you need to. As soon as you've sort of hit that transition period, you don't feel like you need things anymore, you don't have to, that's absolutely cool. So I love that you can use that no matter what sort of stage of the labour you're at, and that's sort of how I would recommend going for it. So I would recommend picking whatever you want to be using on you to get you through the initial, that labour phase, that transition phase, and really just help push you into that second stage where it's just nothing else is happening, can't think of anything else. Okay, so hopefully that's what's going to get you through the labour, the birth, etc. Okay, so I'm just going to put that. So once the birth's happened, okay, hopefully there's not really any use for oils anymore. Okay, another reason why we don't want to put them on you so much while we're, while we're in labour is because, that we should all know that sense of smell is so important for that bonding with mum, with baby, that freshness of that baby. So we really want that smell to just be all mum, we want all mum everywhere. Okay, so generally we don't want to add any oils in that are going to interfere with that at all. So generally, even in the first few days, you're not going to use as much as you would normally unless you've got something specific that comes up that you want to target, okay? Like as I mentioned, I think I'm back into the hemorrhoids, all right? But again, you sort of want to be more conscious of using the oils away from the newborn so that those smells don't interfere so much, okay? So, but we do also have some oils on hand that can help with some things afterwards as well, okay? So our helichrysum, if we are experiencing our third stage when the placenta's coming. Sorry, I'm just being slightly interrupted. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm back, and I'll just got my communication oils. I've only got a couple of minutes to go, so yeah, I've just had the interruption, but that's fine. So we want to keep them clear of the babies, not interrupt that that newborn attachment area, etc. And so the third stage, that's where I was up to. Excuse me. So third stage, when we're getting having that happening, the placenta coming and all of that sort of stuff, a helichrysum is fabulous, really, really fabulous for that as well. Okay, so all those horrible after pains, those uterine cramping down, really, really fabulous for that. Okay, so that's a way that I would go and reach the helichrysum pretty much straight away afterwards if I wanted to. But yeah, so since we're talking about keeping the smell sort of separate, you might dilute much more than you usually would. You might put on a couple of layers of shirts over the top before you pick up baby again, etc. But also, I don't want us to go too overboard with just keep babies away from the oil thing at all. Not at all. You wouldn't. You'd walk into your bathroom after it's, after the air freshener and things like that too. You think about things your baby's being exposed to anyway. Different smells in the house. This isn't really all that much different. We just want to use care and caution, and really, really honouring that time of that newborn attachment happening. Okay, so I think that is about all I wanted to run through, and I'm just conscious of time. I'm just obviously got a little bit distracted there, so I'll just move into finishing up. So we've already talked about where you can go, about how you can go and have a look for yourself to find stuff that you're more comfortable with, to make sure you're comfortable with what you are using. There is a great essential oil for pregnancy book written by a midwife. Stephanie Fritz, I believe, is the author of that book. That's a really fabulous one to get your hands on if you would like. It's a great way to just have a whole bunch of stuff there on hand, a whole bunch of different recipes and ideas. Absolutely fabulous is that one. Okay, so just to finish up, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you've never tried these oils before from doTERRA, feel free to get in touch. I'm quite happy to send you some to try. I want to make sure that you can really experience what these are for yourself. If you've been sent here by someone else, then feel free to go and get in touch with them and see how you can get your hands on any of these oils that I've talked about today. Otherwise, come and chat to me and I can give you a hand getting any of these, any others, answering any other questions that you may have. I'm absolutely happy to. So I'm just going to finish off with a quick giveaway now. So I'll just think of a quick question that I can use to ask people. And I'm actually going to give away, not the whole bottle, but this is my helichrysum, and I'm actually going to give away a sample of the helichrysum, okay? Because it's that fabulous, and it is quite precious, so it can be a bit hard to get our hands on. So I'm going to be giving away helichrysum samples, all right? So My question for the giveaway is going to be, which 3 oils of the top 10 are ones that you want to dilute extra when you are pregnant? Okay, that is my question. So if you can answer that for me in the comments or the link back in the event or below, then that would be absolutely fabulous, and you will be in the draw for my giveaway. All right, I hope everyone's gotten some great information from today, maybe written down a few things that they either didn't know before or want to explore a bit more. Come back to me with any more questions, and I will be doing a lot more in-depth classes on this topic further in the future. Right, thank you so much, everybody. And I will try and figure out how to stop. I don't think that actually stopped the recording. I think that just stopped my video. All right, bye.